Demerqa the Diplomat by CosmicLeviathan18. Demerqa is an overlord of the Mephrit Dynasty who is currently involved in a civil war with the other overlords to become the pharaoh of the Mephrit Dynasty. During the flesh times of the Necrons, Demerqa was born into a plebeian life, but was very charismatic and always dreamed about making something of herself and become part of the ruling class of the Necron tier. When she was old enough, she applied to be a political advisor for the royal family of the Mephrit. She was originally denied due to her not being part of the noble families, but caught the attention of the chief diplomat of the Mephrit, Hotes. Under his tutelage, she learned more about Necron law and diplomacy. She would spend days and days in the Mephrit archives, poring over their history and treaties with other dynasties. After learning under Hotes for about 3 years, his health started to fail due to the oppressive radiation of the Necron sun, which led her to stand in for him during negotiations. After the death of her mentor Hotes, there was a scramble to try and replace the void he left. Demerqa and several other Necrons applied for the position of chief diplomat. The pharaoh of the Mephrit dynasty at that time, Kyric the Eternal, could not decide which Necron to choose, so he offered a challenge. Whichever Necron could negotiate the best treaty for the dynasty in 1 month would become his new diplomat. Demerqa, taking advantage of her charisma and her knowledge of ancient treaties, exploited every loophole she knew of, and she exploited every Necron that she made a deal with to offer the perfect deal for the pharaoh. The deal was the ownership of an entire solar system for the cost of his signature. After she spent 2 days going over how she accomplished this, the pharaoh made her his new chief diplomat and granted her the title of Lord Demerqa. With her new position, she immediately started diplomacy with other dynasties and gaining Mephrit more and more power. She also took advantage of this by gaining knowledge of other dynasties, like combat lessons from the Novik warriors, the magic of the Nephrik, and even battlefield tactics from the legendary Nemesaur Xandrek. Everything was going perfectly for Demerqa until the day they contacted the C'tan. Demerqa was there when the C'tan offered them the immortality they so desperately desired. She was in the minority of not trusting the C'tan nor the deal they offered. On the day of biotransference, she willingly followed her pharaoh into the vats to become a Necron. During the war in heaven, there was little use for her powers of diplomacy, but having some aptitude in military strategy, Kyric gave her an army of her own to continue the war throughout the galaxy. During her first deployment to an Old One's world protected by Eldar, she became entranced by the solar system's twin red suns. Instead of going planet to planet to find the Old One's hiding spot, she instead stole the cores of the 2 suns and forged them into her beloved Staff of Light, dooming the solar system to a supernova death. When the Silent King ordered the Great Sleep, Demerqa constructed her tomb world on the far reaches of Mephrit territory. When she awoke from the Great Sleep, her entire tomb had sunk deep into the planet after millions of years of tectonic movement. She dug her way out of her stasis pod, and she found most of her tomb world had awoken at the same time. She spent decades digging back up to the surface to find out that the arid planet they settled on was no more than a giant bog now. She sent scarabs out to scout the planet and found a new race they had never heard of before, a race calling themselves humans, and they had constructed a city taller than any mountain on the entire planet. Demerqa sent a cryptech to establish communications with the humans, only to find out that they brutally destroyed him before he made it to the city. Seeing that she could not negotiate with these humans and not wanting to waste any more of her underlings' lives, she spent the next 50 years awaking the rest of her tomb world so they could take over the Hive City. It took her weeks to finally fight her way all the way to the pinnacle of the Hive City, where she barely survived fighting a Death Watch captain, and he was sent there to destroy the Necron tomb for control of the Hive City. She has now heavily modified the Hive City to her own personal fortress and expanded her influence on the nearby solar systems, earning her the title Overlord Demerqa. She still makes deals with other dynasties to further her own goals, but some are starting to catch on to her manipulative ways and they turn her down. She now turns her attention to fighting with the other overlords of the Mephrit Dynasty for the right to call themselves Pharaon. She's also trying to recover the lost knowledge of the star-destroying technology the Mephrit have used. While it may seem that she was once one of the lucky few to come out of the long sleep unscathed, she frequently deals with uncontrollable anger that only ends with death of something else. For example, while on the battlefield, she was once hit by a stray lasbolt from a guardsman. She calculated the trajectory of the bolt right back to the guardsman and fought her way to him until she killed him, even though she sustained a dangerous amount of damage just to get back to him. After his death, she regained her control and commanded the rest of the battle without incident. But due to this, she tries to keep a new like guard around her to make sure they can attempt to stop her uncontrollable outbursts.